Susu, hello, and labas, which is hello in Lithuanian. I started saying this and everyone probably wondered why, but we eventually found out in 1309 after a very long wait. In the year 1300, we started off as serfs, which is worse than starting as peasants, and it didn't take long to find that out. We got off to a great start when we lost both of Gen 0, Edelbjorg and Vilkas the Older. It was a crushing blow. And I've got to say, it seemed like everyone cared much more about Edelbjorg than they did Vilkas the Older. Bummer. It also took 5 woohoos, but Selby, our Gen 1 heir's wife, finally got pregnant, and Darius got stung by poisonous bees. Really fantastic start. In 1301, Selby went to make a deal to save his life with a witch. We had to roll to see the cost, which was no cost for now. Spooky. She also gave birth to baby 1 of Gen 2, Gri, who I embarrassingly called Gred for the first year of her life. We'll pretend we don't remember that. Meanwhile, our sister Dovile went on a date with her crush, a freed person named Harlan Brewer, who, after sharing a kiss, asked her to woohoo in public, which she then agreed to. After that, she wished at the wishing well and earned 5,000 simoleons. So that was good. Oh, and she was pregnant. Later, the town gossip came and yelled at her. Dovile found out she was pregnant and went to tell Harlan, who seemed happy, and they became soulmates. But he was pretty angry when her brother asked a question like, "Does this mean you'll marry her?" Year 1302, pretty straightforward year. Gri aged up to an infant. Dovile had her baby, who we named Leanne. Harlan kept contacting Dovile. And we went to a May Day festival where the Earl of Lancaster told Dovile she needed to marry into the Evanson family to calm the feud between our two families. Right when we got home, Selby went into labor, giving birth to the heir for Gen 2, Aedwulf. Dovile told her brothers about the Earl's scheme, and they told her to marry the Plowmans instead, and that Vilkas would take her place of marrying an Evanson. And that was pretty much the end of 1302. In 1303, we opened up an alehouse and made some pretty good money. Gri aged up to a toddler, but had a bad roll. Luckily, Darius, our Gen 1 heir, was able to plead for her successfully. Hearing the news and realizing how short life is, Harlan took Dovile away so they could elope. Romantic. He then came back to tell his family and the Earl, and was banished from Lancastershire. However, the Earl was especially displeased with Darius since he's the head of his household, and their relationship went down as a result. 1304 was an eventful and tragic year. Darius became soulmates with Somerled Evanson, the very same family who Dovile had tried to avoid marrying, and who are the bitter enemies of our family. We had a Midsummer's festival, but Selby then gave birth to our second son, Esmond, and rolled a fatal roll during the birthing process. Due to a mistake on my part, we had no chance to plead for her. Whoopsies. We met up with the Brewers, who had moved to London, and found that Dovile was pregnant with her second child. They were running a pretty successful alehouse, and Leanne aged up to a toddler with no problems. Dovile gave birth to her first son, named Aiken II after his grandfather, and also rolled a fatal birthing roll. Harlan tried to plead for her, but Grim was merciless and told him no. Meanwhile, back in the main house, Aedwulf aged up to a toddler and also rolled a bad roll. Darius pleaded again and, luckily, was successful in convincing Grim to spare his child. Other than that, there was a seasonal archery competition, which Vilkas won. In 1305, Oakley came over to help Darius with the children. Vilkas traveled to London to attend his sister's funeral, which was very sad. Harlan aged up to a young adult successfully. Back in the Payne holding, the Earl reminded Darius that Vilkas now had to marry into the Evanson family to deal with the disputes between their two homes, But when the families met, it didn't exactly go well. So later that night, Vilkas told Oakley of his plans, and he left his family behind and searched for freedom. By 1306, Vilkas had run off in the night and was hiding in the woods. When we told the Earl Vilkas was gone, he was absolutely livid, and Darius was required to marry Sif Evanson to make things right. And without being in my control or assigned any buffs by me, Somerled played his part in the story pretty perfectly. We learned about the flawed character that was Darius Dovile and Vilkas' grandfather, as well as the influence he had over Vilkas' life. Sif Evanson accepted her new life pretty easily, and Vilkas evaded capture as he made his break for freedom. Sif immediately became pregnant after only one woohoo, thankfully. Gree aged up to a child and was very pretty, if I do say so myself, and Esmond aged up to an infant. Both of them rolled good rolls, making the age up easy. Darius chatted a little bit with his soulmate Somerled, who, as a reminder, is also Sif's brother. He also revealed that he was wildly attracted to Dagmar, our next-door neighbor and Sawyer Plowman's wife. For some reason, this gave Sif the fear of being cheated on. I wonder why. And for a brief moment in time, the rental units worked as intended, and all was wonderful with the families being on the same lot. It was a very brief moment in time. In London, at the Brewers, Aiken had to age up to a toddler, and thankfully he was successful with his role, which brought 1306 to a close. In 1307, a king and his entourage traveled through Lancashire, and we lost all our food because it sucks to be a serf. Sif gave birth to a baby girl, who we named Dovile after her sister. We went to London to be there for Leanne's birthday, but she rolled to be sentenced to moving on from this life. Harlan tried to plead again, but again was unable to convince Grimm to take pity on him. I also discovered that Darius was delusional because he seemed to believe that his love life was drama-free, but I had a very different opinion. Aedwulf aged up to a child and survived his birthday. Oh, and Sif got pregnant after one woohoo again. 1308. Vilkas arrived and got married in Lithuania to a woman named Agla. They did as they should and got to work making heirs as quickly as possible. Vilkas took up a new skill of blacksmithing and seemed to be getting settled into his new life in Lithuania. Back in England, there was an archery competition which Darius somehow won. We had to move back to a new version of our original lot due to issues with the for-rent residential rental lots. Ooh. Sif had unexpected twins, who we named Twyla and Edgar, but sadly both Twyla and Sif rolled fatal rolls. But somehow, Darius, Grimm's most beloved sim, was able to plead for Sif successfully. Now that's the third sim he's saved from death's door, and no one knows how he's able to keep doing it. But okay. Agla in Lithuania also gave birth to Vilkas' first child, who we named Lucas, but sadly for baby Lucas, it wasn't meant to be for him, and we lost them. 1309 was a huge year with a great many birthdays and a great much of stress. The first was little Dovile, and she was successful. Next was our Gen 1 heir, Darius. He was not so lucky. We tried to plead for him, but our pleas fell on Grimm's deaf ears. He had loved Darius too much and wanted to keep him with him. This means an heirship change, so Aedwulf is our new heir, but he won't be a teenager until 1314, right around when the famine hits. Yay! However, the birthday fest wasn't over, and on the third day of 1309, it was Esmond's turn to roll for childhood. Luckily, he rolled well and made it. When we got to the Brewers, Harlan was still struggling with the loss of his wife and daughter, and the fear that his son wouldn't make it was almost too much. But, fortunately, Aiken II rolled well and lived to carry on. At that point, we had to sprint to Lithuania, where Agla was again in labor. She gave birth to a little girl, who we named Jelva, and we were happy when both mom and baby were fine. We also received a rare gift when the spirits of our lost family members visited us on All Souls Day, because Vilkas, having fled for freedom, will never be able to return home to mourn their graves. Last, we had to finish up with Vilkas's young adult age up, and he also rolled lucky, living to carry on his line in Lithuania. All in all, we lost 8 Sims during this decade, with our average age of death at 20 and a third years. And we have 3 very near misses under our belt. All in all, it's been a pretty wild time, and I can't wait to see what happens next decade. So see you all in 1310. Bye bye, everyone.